We are at Boston College High School today, and we are also virtual on Zoom. So I'm going to go over some meeting notes and procedures. The virtual public meeting will be recorded. The Massachusetts Department of Transportation may choose to retain and distribute the video, still images, audio, and or chat transcripts. By continuing attendance with this virtual public meeting, you are consenting to participate in a recorded event. All recordings and chat transcripts will be considered a public record. And if you are not comfortable being recorded, please turn off your camera, keep your microphone muted, and refrain from chatting in the transcript box. Otherwise, you may choose to excuse yourself from the meeting. Some other important notes that your microphone and webcam are automatically disabled upon entering the meeting, and the meeting will be open to questions and answers at the end of the presentation. All questions and comments are welcomed and appreciated. However, we do request that you refrain from any disrespectful comments. And just some Zoom controls for our friends online. You can use the drop-down menu to check the microphone and speakers. You can use the Q&A button to ask a question and share comments. You can use the hand button to raise your hand. And if you're unable to access the internet or are having technical problems, please call into the meeting at 312-626-6799. Webinar ID 865-4743-6227. We also have closed captioning automatically generated by Zoom. And if you are having trouble with the meeting technology during the presentation, please call 1-888-799-9666.
Thank you, Ashton. So my name is Ethan Brickland. I'm with Mass DOT, the project manager of the Office of Transportation Planning. I'm going to turn it over to Secretary to the chair of the Morrissey Commission. To turn them on, you have to hold it down for a second.
All right, is it working?
Yeah.
I can't use the microphone. So I just want to thank everyone for coming tonight. We have a pretty long presentation, so I don't want to take up too much time. I just want to thank you all for coming out. Traffic was horrible tonight, so I really do appreciate you taking the time to be here. It's, like I said, this is our third meeting. We're just going to go through some updates about the project, talk through some of the specifics. So we're just going to go ahead and get into it so we can get to the public options.
Thank you. So just to refresh your slide here, introductions, we have members of the Senate, members of PCR, Building Authority, City of Boston. Oh, apologies. Yes, I will speak louder. Okay, my apologies. So commission introductions. And just a refresher on the commission goals. So the charge of the commission is to improve mobility for all those pedestrians, transit users, cyclists, and motorists. The core charge is to strengthen climate resiliency, Dorchester and along Morrissey Boulevard specifically. We also are looking to develop a comprehensive plan for the commission as well as concept alternatives, which you'll see some of the development here today. And another charge is to identify short-term investments, and we'll hear some of that at the end of the presentation as well from PCR. Meeting purpose. So we're here tonight, as we just provided a little context and background of the study. And we're going to introduce alternatives. So introduce alternatives and consideration. So we want to show you our alternatives development to date, so we can hear feedback from the public as well as commission members. We're going to identify our next steps to the board commission meeting, and as I already noted, we want to solicit feedback from both commission members as well as the public. And just as a side note, there is a sign-in sheet outside the door here, if you would like to speak afterwards and ask questions. Got the microphone there in the center. Bear with me on the presentation. It's slow. Deck advances. No, it's not. Okay, so as I noted, some of the charges of the commission, we also wanted to note, that while the charge of the commission is to study and examine, for Morrissey Boulevard specifically, this presentation doesn't include content outside of Morrissey Boulevard specifically. This additional content is intended to provide, sort of regional context for the corridor, but also to facilitate, broader public discussion. So we're gonna get into the technical portion of the study presentation. So again, we have a charge from the commission, but we also have broken this charge into our study focus. And so we are looking at corridor mobility, as we noted, for all users, safety, improved waterfront access, as well as maintain and improve vehicular circulation. Resiliency and ecology. Again, we understand there's flooding along Morrissey and it's a lot of it's coastal, so we want to make sure that we are focused on climate resiliency. Placemaking is not just about making the area resilient, but also a place to go to and to live in, ability and constructability. At the end of the day, we don't want to propose things that can construct. So we look at things like costing, what operations and maintenance would be, as well as lifespan. And so this slide here, just kind of focused on our design approach. I think when you look at this graphic, it really tells that, you know, right now, left side vehicles, right side vehicles, as well as other modes. I think that is what we're really trying to focus on, from what it looks like now to what looks like on the right side. Slow to. And in addition to our sort of road, looking at our road configuration, we obviously are focusing on coastal resilience. And this is a slide we had shown in the prior presentation, and it's meant to illustrate the areas of protected and the areas of unprotected. And so just we've already covered this, we have a lot of slides, so really what I'm going to speak to on this is that sort of the northern portion of our study area, we have a lot of protection in the southern area as well. It's the central zone that we're going to be focused on for climate resiliency. And this graphic just illustrates a little bit more wave action and talk about a term called design flood elevation. So that's essentially what we would have to bring the roadway up to, or areas that aren't roadway for protection. Design flood elevation. So this graphic just is more of a side view of what the design flood elevation needs to be. We have our existing roadway and then what the year 2050 design flood elevation should be. And we had shown this in a different way last time. Here, we're showing our existing roadway of 9.5 feet, and then we have to add 4.5 feet for the year 2050. And then for 2070, we have to go up to another 6.5 feet above 9. So this is just meant to illustrate sort of the what we would have to raise the area of the road to prevent against flooding. So I'm gonna turn it over to Casey. Part of the team, he is going to go through much of the technical work. You've heard a lot from me the past couple of evenings, so I'm sure you're gonna be happy to hear from somebody else.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Casey Harden. I'm a transportation engineer with AECom, or consultant working on the project. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the background on transportation conditions, explain how we set the footprint for what we're trying to do with specific alternatives. I think a lot of you know from your route here that the traffic started. Go on tonight. So we're going to start with traffic. I think I heard quite a few people muttering on their way in. I got stuck at all those red dots that you got stuck, right? So the Morrissey corridor is really constrained by these bottleneck intersections. At K Circle, Freeport, at B and Cool. The intersections themselves can't process the demand trying to get through there. So when you think about Morrissey as a 3 or 4 lane roadway, during the peak hour, for the most part, those lanes are just kind of storing parked cars that creep in 5 miles an hour from stop to stop. So I wanted to kind of set that in the backdrop, also thinking about the use of the pool. When we look at, there's a clear commuting peak, when we look at the origin destination trend, south to north in the morning, of course, north to south in the evening. But we wanted to highlight that those final destinations are pretty close in on the southern end, basically Quincy. We're not kind of going too far down the coast, but that Morrissey is predominantly a through corridor during the peaks. By some metrics, up to kind of 60–80% of drivers are coming all the way through from K Circle down to the top during those peak periods. And what does that lead to? These some safety issues. There's 7 at each of the bolded locations here. So that's K Circle, Preble Circle. There are locations that are on the high crash location. The crash frequency is higher than expected based on the number of drivers that are going through there. And we see issues with the through traffic, with speeds. We flagged a location here in the northern part of the corridor, kind of right outside where we are, where off peak, middle of the night, middle of the day, people are driving over 50 miles an hour. It's a really difficult environment to try to cross, and it does not create for an environment that's connected with roads. Waiting for the next slide. There we go. The other problem that through movement, those high speeds, the heavy traffic volume causes is it creates difficulty for some. There's a statistic called level of bicyclist stress that essentially measures how many cars and how fast they're going next to other bikes. Those red lines all the way up and down Boulevard rather unsurprisingly indicate that it is the absolute worst level of stress. Not drive in a non-protected bicycle lane boulevard. And your cycle line probably is not surprised by that. When we think about bicyclist design, though, we wanted to bring to your attention some of these profiles. So when we try to design bicycle facilities, we think about comfort. We want a family to be comfortable using the facility, not just your avid long distance cyclists. So when we think about Morrissey, we think about being along the ocean, places we want to have people gather. We want to make sure they're accommodatable to all. Also a difficult corridor for pedestrians. On this map, we highlight in red a variety of deficiencies. The small nodes indicate that there's a crosswalk missing or deficient, and there's a series of segments that indicate missing sidewalks. But in addition to the missing sidewalks, they're often very narrow, or condition maybe isn't that great. And with the city's new goals to increase pedestrian walking comfort, they're not getting that 8-foot goal that we'd like to see on sidewalk conditions. There's also several locations that are east-west, critical corridors across Morrissey. Basically, where you can get across Morrissey, then you can also get underneath the red line or underneath that. I think it's really important that we focus on those locations and prioritize east-west. With that kind of background for transportation, as even suggested on the climate resiliency side, we're going to go through the corridor and highlight some of the potential alternatives that we're looking at. Here's we're about the midway, 3/4 way through this commission process, so that we can give you the opportunity to see them, give us some feedback, so that we can come back to the drawing board as we advance towards the final recommendation. To go through this process, we're gonna break the corridor up into 3 big chunks, starting in the north, where the focus is on reconfiguring the roadway facility, but also looking at placemaking green infrastructure. The focus in that central section is very definitively on the coastal resiliency, but also looking at, again, how to better configure the roadway, and then back to more of a transportation focus in the southern part of the corridor. Now, when we talk about reconfiguration, we are looking at some diagrams, some drawings that start with the previous DCR design that recommended eliminating one of the through lanes on Morrissey Boulevard and using that space to better accommodate bicyclists and pedestrians. You can see on this cross section going from the existing to the proposed, how the area for vehicles is a little bit narrower, and that space is then allocated to either a bicycle lane or sidewalks. Now, when you think about that, and you're starting to get a little scared, I just want to remind you of that point at the beginning. When we think about the way traffic operations and the way they go poorly, it's because of these no intersections. There's too much trying to get through this one spot. So I'm going to talk about, as we go through the corridor, how we're working on some engineering solutions to help those intersections work, despite the idea of allocating the space better to bicyclists. And to do that, we started with some traditional traffic control mechanisms, traffic signal, pretty basic, roundabout, those are pretty standard. But we're also looking at some relatively progressive intersections that are all designed to remove turning vehicles or move them out of the way. That allows the intersection to focus on processing fewer movements. It can get more cars through, while also consolidating the space to help manage speeds and to find ways to redirect and relocate those movements. And I'll show you as we go through the corridor how that would work. Starting at the northern part of the corridor, again, as I mentioned, looking at a transportation focus, we're thinking about repurposing really wide roadways, a lot of asphalt, looking at east-west connectivity to both park, between East High and the Globe site, and then connecting all of that to the UMass, JFK UMass T-stop. It's important as all these developments occur in this area that centrally we walk. It's really important if you look at vehicular demand and managing that we give people an opportunity to get to the high quality transit service. As we focus on the northern part of the corridor, we've looked at a couple different ways we might reconfigure Preble Circle. So on that first diagram with the safety drawing, we may have noted Preble Circle is one of those locations with noted as a high crash location. Very kind of confusing, although some of the recent striping improvements have gone a good way to better delineate traffic. One of the things we wanted to look at was a redesign as a modern route. That would allow us to tighten up some of the specific approaches, add some curvature, which helps manage speeds. This is one alternative we developed. The other would actually look at creating a traditional traffic signal. Be a big change. We are kind of accounting for the fact that it would potentially process traffic, but also understanding that it would be a big change that each of these processes needs to be vetted. But that this would, we know, potentially have wider approaches than the roundabout, but we're still working through that traffic analysis. And come our next and final meeting, to be able to share some more results which one of these performs better. As we move further south along that Columbia Road segment to K Circle, we focus on potential east-west connectivity. Right now, there's several at-grade pedestrian crossings. Then there's also a pedestrian bridge. So we're thinking about, from an urban design perspective, the latest practice is to try to encourage that activity in the street. When you kind of limit crossings of a street like that to purely up and over, it kind of creates this is for the cars, this is for the people. So as we look at what we might do to, so again, looking north now, up towards Preble Circle and downtown in the distance, with Mosley Park to our right, one kind of initial alternative we've looked at is just simply reconfiguring the crosswalks here at the local road intersections, converting the bicycle lane, which right now is on the road side of the parking, to making it a parking protected bike lane, putting it off on the right side of where the cars are. And then We have a second alternative that actually takes us even a step further. This looks at potentially removing the median and providing bus lanes. We've collaborated with our friends at the city and through some of their work, thinking about how, again, with these significant developments coming in from the point, wanting to ensure that there is multimodal access and potentially having a dedicated bus facility on this segment could help facilitate that. Now, as we get towards the Cosmuso Circle intersection, we need to explain that there's been a separate project that's been broken out for Cosmuso Circle and I-93 Columbia Road interchange. That project is advancing on its own through coordination with us. It has a lot of the same goals and objectives aimed to reduce congestion, improve safety. And as we look at the study area, right, it kind of comes right in between the segment we were just talking about, but then does look at, as Columbia Road bends around, these are the interchange ramps. It's a very early stage. They're still working on their scoping. They're planning out their public engagement process. I think the key point here is they're going to be looking at a variety of different options with a design year of 2045, which is lining up with our kind of future year traffic analysis. So what? The design year. So that's when we project the traffic out to a future year to analyze what the road traffic volumes could be.
So this is new. This project has actually been presented about 10 to 13 years ago with lots of many meetings from the community through going through Cosmuso Circle all the way down. All of this has been presented with all of these different ebbs and flows with the growth of the company. How does your presentation compare to what the city has already spent lots of money on teaching us all of this? This is not new to the community at all. And now we have 10 years of data of traffic and flow from that. So what is the difference? Because this is the exact same thing, except more basic from where we progressed to 10 years ago. On the exact same stretch, minus the environmental planning portion. So please don't waste our time and let's talk about the differences and what's evolved in the last 10 years from the exact same. Because these dates were presented to us almost 15 years ago, and where's that lack of time? Maybe someone from the city could address that too. Because that is a waste of our money, our time, and the exact same thing that we did and discussed. I can show you my notes on it, but I'm sure you have all of the notes because they've been documented. And sorry for my frustration, but I mean.
I appreciate your frustration.
I'm sorry.
I'd love to just launch more in the presentation. I think some of the drawings we have down to being fully Freeport are much newer and are going to show you some exciting potential ideas. But,
Are you including 10,000 new housing units, 7 square feet of new plans?
yeah, so a lot of the work we've done since that last meeting was to corroborate that statistic. And I think depending on where you draw the line, the 1,000 or whether it's 800 or 1,000, it's a little different. But yes, we are. We went back and we looked at the data that is in the official forecast model. We've added thousands of population increase, and we've added thousands of employment to account for these future both Bay City and some of the other developments proposed in and around.
For the woman's point.
Hold on for a second. Can we just get to the presentation so that we can get everyone's questions at the same time? Because I want to make sure that we're not getting that ahead. You might be answering the questions as we're getting through this. And I definitely understand your frustration, but we also want to make sure that those who weren't here during the previous meetings about this, that they won't have an opportunity to access the same information. So if we could just hold off just until you finish this. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you. And for that specific project, the King Circle Columbia Road interchange, MassDOT plans on targeting late 2024 with some additional specific public outreach. So if we look further south and we focus on this segment right outside us here at BC High, we're looking at whether there's really the need for those service roads. They take up a lot of space, they continue to facilitate that high-speed mobility, and they really impede the corridor from being a good access point to the station. We're also looking at something that was thought up in the Columbia Master Plan many years ago, with putting a signalized intersection in the middle of the block between K Circle and B. We're now looking south towards B and Cooley, from here to the left. The first option we looked at is a relatively simple reduction in the number of lanes and providing for the bicyclist and pedestrian facilities. We have a second alternative that provides that signalized intersection and brings all four roadways together. And then the final alternative that doesn't have that signalized intersection, but it's eliminated those frontage roads. You can see how that creates additional opportunity for green space. A little bit further south, right at the Cooley intersection. Again, we see some opportunities with the consolidation of the roadway, to bring in the bicycle facility and potentially create some environmental space in the vicinity of Madison Cove. And in general, what we're looking at again is allocating some of that space, that's the flat pavement, to bicyclists, pedestrians, to create some additional space within the pool. At the Cooley itself, we've looked at two of those potential innovative intersections. The first one is called a continuous green T. So the way that a continuous green T intersection works is it essentially allows one movement, this southbound movement, to flow green at all times. And that creates a really efficient intersection because it never has to stop these cars. And it allows us to really net the intersection down to facilitate kind of smaller crossing distances. So we like that from this perspective. The other alternative we're looking at Cooley is what's called a partial median turn. So that's where drivers, instead of today, where they swoop off to the right to make their left into Ian Cooley, they would continue straight and utilize a new intersection down here to turn left and then make their right. So again, the theory here is we're moving some of those turning movements out of the intersection. That's a thing that we think is sort of a new idea in some of these locations. Instead of trying to make all the lefts happen there, we move them, either we allow the throughs to go all the time and don't have to count them, or we move them out of the intersection altogether. That lets us consolidate and help the intersection operate. And again, the cross sections illustrate that that reduction in size between the things. I'm going to pass things over to
Thank you, Casey. I am the landscape architect on the job. My name is Gonzalo Cruz and I'm with AECOM. So one of what I thought the project was really excited about was the fact that we're combining, by the way, we're talking about the central area now, right? The central area is where we still have those issues of road reduction, but we have an incredible opportunity to actually address the waterfront and make it pedestrianly accessible. But not to the point that we have it today, but a more robust waterfront, and I'll show you what that means. So in concept, what we have right along the central area is a coastal resiliency infrastructure mechanism, which means that a combined raising of the road and a flood wall would actually prevent flooding from coming through Dorchester Bay into the inlet. But how do we do that? We don't do these things that we used to do them back in the 60s and the 50s, right? Where the Army Corps of Engineers would just come in, install walls and prevent floodwaters from coming in. The investments that we are thinking, conceptualizing to put forward, leverage on green infrastructure and placemaking while introducing these mechanisms of flood protection. So the diagram on the left shows it raw, which is something that we will not be doing. What we will be doing is combining the road infrastructure with placemaking opportunities, and I'll show you what they might look like. So generally speaking, we were, Casey was telling us everything that was happening in the north, and he'll tell you more about what's happening in the south. This is about the central area where we believe there's the most opportunities for pedestrians and for placemaking to actually occur. Now, I don't want to dismiss the north and the south with respect to placemaking opportunities. Everywhere we can, in every alternative that we study, we're introducing issues of green infrastructure or pedestrian mobility, bicycle connectivity, rights of way that allow families to actually walk the water in a safe way, that, basically connect you from the north to the south. But when you get to the center is when you get this amazing view to the harbor, to Dorchester Bay. There's an accessible waterfront that I think is looking for an incredible opportunity for gatherings. So that's what's shown in this diagram. So if you can squint your eye because of the scale of the project, you can actually see right through the center. There's a lot of like green areas for programming opportunity. And what we do with that is basically imagine the road being raised and just on the side of the road facing the water as a berm-like structure that introduces a boardwalk, places for people to hang, chill, shade, and a lot of opportunities for ecological and habitat restoration. We'll show you what that means in the next slide. First, we want to show you a little bit about how the actual structure works. Right through the center, because of the proximity to the water, and because we have to raise the road, we're introducing a flood wall. But you will never see the flood wall in the way that we're conceptualizing it and imagining. And then along the edges, to pick up to the rest of the flood systems, the fact that the waters are coming from the side as well, we're sort of proposing a more natural mechanism for protection, one that actually raises dunes and ecological systems and restores a natural ecology. Right in the center is where we have a lot of human activity that can actually be a part of the project. So here's what I think gets a little bit exciting in the central area. I get excited about this stuff because I'm a landscape designer, a landscape architect that focuses on designing waterfronts. Here's a view of what it looks like today. And here is what we imagine the waterfront look like with one of the alternatives. If you look at the bottom of the illustration, that's more or less where the flood wall might be. Because of how we want to animate the waterfront and make it accessible and make it a program. And when I mean by program is, what kinds of activities can happen, what kinds of scrollings, boardwalks, shading, natural ecosystems, ecologies that can actually hold a year-round interest. We're not just talking about summer days, but winter days too, can become an incredible asset to attract people to the water for those that are brave enough to make it. But if you see the flood wall, what it does is like we're placing it in such a way that it allows for various types of programming to happen. So conceptually, with raising the road, we're putting a flood wall to protect storm surges and high waters from coming in from the bay. And along the way, we're introducing a lot of places, a lot of cool things to happen. And that it also goes in part with the with the pedestrian and bicycle facility, right? There will be a very comfortable way to get to the waterfront. And once you get to the waterfront, you'll be in a completely new and different environment. These are other alternatives that we're considering. We have two sides of the bay. We have, the big sort of waterfront that opens up and we envision to be an incredible place to land and to visit. But there's also the inlet. And what we're thinking that perhaps is that we might be able to introduce a pedestrian crossing to connect this into a graded public realm, right? Because we're not only just talking about the outer waterfront, but what happens in the inlet and the restoration that we're going to be doing there with the ecologies that we will be introducing to help protect floodwaters from coming, raising grade in a natural way. But really conceptually what we're thinking is like, you need to combine the two, you need to connect the two so you get a bigger waterfront project. And that might be achieved by introducing a pedestrian crossing from one side of the inlet to the other. And here's a little bit of view of how we imagine it's conceptual, and we're here to take feedback and I get a little bit of your take on how we're thinking about this. But really what we imagine is, if you can divorce the whole sort of road job, because I'm sorry, like the bad for your cases sometimes because you gotta explain that stuff all over again. But what I'm excited about is it's all of the byproducts that the flood protection project also bring into the greater road reduction projects. The raised road, a beautiful accessible waterfront with ecological features, programmatic features, places for people to be, a tidal landscape, a place that actually like inundates from time to time, depending on the tide and the water. This is gonna be a beautiful place to actually experience these natural systems. And also connecting them to the inner side of the state through a pedestrian bridge. Moving more into the infrastructure side of things. Yeah, get to the next slide. Yeah, the other way. Yeah. There you go. Yeah. So there's also this portion along the central area that's a little bit challenged, which is where we have the road bridge, right? There's like pretty much an engineering challenge, and what we're looking into is a timing in that area, which is a big piece of infrastructure, but we think that that is probably the most efficient way to get to the challenge of the floodwaters that come in. So imagine a flood wall combined with tide gate. That's what actually links up the entire alignment to protect these waters. That happens right in the center, and here's a little bit of what that section might look like. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Casey. Explain a little bit more of this out. Back again to talk a little bit about the Beads Bridge project, which is a second other breakout project that MassDOT has initiated to advance the replacement of the Beads Bridge. Everyone knows it's been here for a very long time, has many issues, and usually getting stuff open. So the new design will ensure service life for the next 75 years. Again, the Beads is just that short simple span across the navigation channel to the cove. Very early in development, similar to the case for Morrissey Boulevard project. Continuing coordination. The main point of getting this on its own track is all those initial phases of a bridge project are a little bit different from a road or a flood control project. They include geotechnical, a variety of structure type analyses that they're initiating and will be conducting specific public outreach for that. And as we get past the Beads towards Freeport, we enter the southern zone for that. So again, just that we passed underneath 993, and we have some of the same types of challenges. We have congestion, safety issues at Freeport, important east-west connections at Victory and down Conley Street, safety issues at Post Hill and Neponsit with all the issues it has, in particular, with folks trying to get through there in the mornings. So starting at Freeport, we have two potential ideas again to reconfigure the intersection in a meaningful way. And in this way, we would pull all left turning vehicles out of the intersection. You wouldn't make a northbound left or a southbound left, instead you would come through and make a U-turn up here to get going up, and same type of movement to go for your southbound left turn. So again, the idea is by pulling those movements out of the intersection, we can create some efficiencies to both reduce the footprint, which helps with speed off peak, so people aren't driving through there at 50, but that also helps the intersections process the traffic more efficiently, process the demand more efficiently. And the second idea that we have at Freeport is called a quadrant roadway. And this is a pretty unique application of it, but generally a quadrant roadway essentially builds a little connector across one leg of the intersection. In this case, we would use that to eliminate northbound lefts. So instead of making a northbound left off Morrissey, you would make your right back here, down and up Victory Road. So that would again pull those left turns out of the intersection, allow us to create some more efficiencies for the traffic signal. So we're continuing to evaluate all of those interested in your feedback. As we continue looking to the south, we're again looking at that service road system in and around Victory Road. The need for that again creates an additional thing for pedestrians to have to cross west, although it does have some access management benefits. But most importantly, I think at the northern part, we need to ensure connectivity with the Neponsit River Greenway. Excited to see some of the construction progress and recognizing that there's going to be a big group from the community that wants to get from the neighborhood to the Greenway, but recognizing with this ramp system,
it may be more likely that we facilitate that along Freeport and Victory Road. So we are taking a little bit of a look at that northbound off ramp, and that's whether that's really fully needed in the scheme of traffic, although it's a pretty big task to get one of those. So if we look at what this looks like in rendering, this is looking south now at Victory Road. So our first alternative is just that, reconfiguring the roadway, consolidating, providing some additional space for cyclist facilities. And then a second alternative that removes the frontage road system, creates just one signalized intersection. Does result in a little bit bigger of one intersection, but these are the types of things we're looking to weigh. So I may just split that once or twice, and this is the pros and cons of allowing Victory Road to essentially go through and be part of how that traffic signal. For our southern road section here, from Coastal Circle down to Deposit Circle, we do want to flag that we're looking at this southbound U-turn at Pope's Hill Circle. That's where a lot of people are coming into the neighborhood. And I know you all have done it 15 million times to make that jog all the way over to make the U-turn, and you can see a lot of crashes as a result of that. I know you've never been in one, but we're not really sure that's the best idea from a safety perspective. We've been to close that and would route traffic just down to this next southbound U-turn just before the one. We do see a nice opportunity in some of these medians. So this is, I'm going to give you a rendering that shows sort of a typical application of how we might apply what we call stormwater green infrastructure to some of these median areas. We were talking earlier with Boston Water and Sewer, recognizing some of the challenges they have trying to drain the neighborhoods after these really heavy rain events. And there's just simply a problem getting all the water out of the city. And so the more places we can find to hold the water, store the water within and around the corridor will be the better. So identifying places like this that in heavy rainfall events essentially would serve as a mini little holding pond while the rest of the system does its work getting the water out of the city. Last major bottleneck intersection to talk about here is the Ponset Circle. So just to orient everyone, north is to the left. So here's the Ponset Avenue, here's the bridge. Ponset Avenue goes straight through. So Gallivan Boulevard is down here. This is the whole Ponset Circle with I-93 towering over it. We decided we really wanted to take a hard look at this segment. This is where you folks who are going north, you end up stuck trying to get up, and the off ramps back up all the way down, and you're just trying to keep going straight. Yeah, get stuck and try to get all the way to the left and hook around. So our idea here is to convert this segment here to two-way. Right, today it's only one way this way. So by allowing the Ponset Avenue northbound traffic to go straight through, we're taking a lot of pressure off this leg, which already is dealing with, especially in the morning peak, all these people trying to get on the northbound. So the idea here is by opening that one leg up bi-directionally, with all these people who are just going straight through, or even coming from Gallivan Boulevard, they can just turn left and go that way instead of cycling all the way around and in this mess of a weaving here in the Ponset. Now, within the roadway reconfiguration, we're also looking for opportunities to create better east-west connectivity. We recognize it's a pretty intimidating environment with the hulking overpasses and a somewhat limited pedestrian accommodation. So we've looked at creating something like a pocket park. A lot of municipalities have successfully activated the type of space in and around overpasses, the combination of lighting, infrastructure, and nice, wide, comfortable pedestrian amenities can help create that activity that we're not seeing today. So to wrap up the presentation, Ethan's going to talk a little bit about how we're going to use the evaluation criteria we developed to evaluate the alternatives.
Thank you, Casey. So I'm back up here to kind of walk you through how we look at our alternatives. So like I said at the beginning, we're in the alternatives development phase, and the commission is obviously the overarching guiding body for this effort. But from a study perspective, from a study process perspective, come out to the public, show our alternatives. At this point, we are concept development, we are not project development. So we're showing a number of variations. The goal here is to hear from everybody. We're not showing these to say, this is what we are going to do. This is what we want to hear from everybody. So with that said, our process is to develop alternatives, but as we develop them, we have to be thinking about how we're going to analyze them. And how, so the next step is analyzing after we hear feedback and development, and we analyze them based on our evaluation criteria. So all along, we've been thinking about this, and as you can see from this slide, corridor mobility, resiliency, ecology, placemaking, constructability, these are very high level goals, these are our focus. So this is a high level, and when we dig a little deeper on our corridor mobility criteria, so essentially, as our when we look at mobility, we're going to look at these types of criteria on. And so we look at for vehicles of hour delay, queuing, travel time mobility, those are more related to vehicular. We are also looking at transit access, pedestrian gaps, pedestrian level comfort. Casey noted that bicycle level stress was a big measure of how we look at whether or not people are willing to use the facilities infrastructure. Obviously, safety, crash reduction, and just to look at intersection level services. Casey noted pinch points are the intersection. So this is essentially for our next step after we take feedback on alternative development. We would like to use that to refine our alternatives, but also to analyze them in detail. Again, we've been thinking about this the entire time. We have been digging a little bit, but we have to develop these, analyze them in more detail as part of the next step. Resiliency and ecology, again, we're going to look at impacts of existing and future environmental resources. Obviously, coastal flooding is a major concern. We have to look at stormwater events in addition to coastal flooding. It's obviously a driving factor. Wave mitigation, and one thing we do look at is impervious surface area. With more pervious area, there can be more runoff, but more damage. So we do the impervious surface is good to have. Placemaking. So obviously, this isn't just about infrastructure; it's about placemaking. So we look at open space, visual, obviously, and seeing with existing plans, because there are a lot of things going on both in the neighborhoods, the city, and with MassDOT and other entities, DCR, also our sewer. Neighborhood disruption, we want to minimize disruption both from kind of potential construction, but also any kind of long-term disruption that may or may not be created as part of the final design. Recreational access and key diet effects. These are as climate change and global warming, we have to concern about creating very hot spot heat island effects and realizing that. And constructability, I noted this earlier, but again, we have to obviously have to be aware of what the construction costs would be. Constructability, that is much more along the lines of thinking about it from a permitting standpoint. Can it actually be done? Because some people use feasibility in the term of like, can you construct that or not? But oftentimes it's not about throwing money at it. It's sometimes the permitting process just doesn't allow you to do certain things. So that is something we look at very closely, because ultimately, if it is not permittable, it's not constructible. And we have to look at what kind of future maintenance there might be. We want to implement cost-effective solutions to minimize future maintenance costs. And permitting complexity is tied to constructibility. So with that said, I'm actually going to turn it over briefly to Rob Lowell from TCR, who's going to talk about some of the short-term corridor improvements.
Thank you, Ethan. I'm Robert Lowell, Deputy Chief Design Engineering at the Department of Conservation and Recreation. Wanted to identify some of our short-term improvements at the Freeport Street intersection. Improvements were completed in fall of 2023 that included safer pedestrian crossings with new signal actuators, a larger bicycle and pedestrian mid-crossing refuges, and ADA accessible ramps at all the crossing points. An additional left turn lane was also added from Freeport Street to enable two-lane movement from Freeport eastbound onto Morrissey, and that was done last fall. This spring, DCR will resurface the inner access road from Old Colony to Cooley Boulevard and reconstruct the sidewalks. Along, I guess it's the west side, the Star Market side of Morrissey. And the inner access roads from Beaver Village to Mount Vernon Street were done last fall. Those are our roadway improvements. I also wanted to note that the Morrissey Boulevard pump station design, DCR is working on a pump station to address flooding that occurs near Conway Street and along the corridor. And this has been started in 2019. We're now getting to actual construction. Presently, DCR deploys portable pump to address nuisance flooding along Morrissey Boulevard. However, the new pump station will operate automatically and remove stormwater from Morrissey Boulevard and also improve the drainage between Conley Street and McCone Street all the way down to Marketplace on Morrissey Boulevard. That's the catchment area that will be affected. And NASDOT is currently constructing the pump station utility corridor for DCR that's coincident with the Ponce Greenway Trail. And once that is done, DCR will complete construction of the pump station next year and put the pump station in operation. That's the summary of the short term.
Thank you, Rob. So just getting into next steps before we open it up. So again, third meeting, so heavily into alternatives development, preliminary alternatives analysis. So what we've shown you has been through a preliminary screening at the study team level. Again, you can't fully bake the analysis until we hear from the public and alternatives development that is in the process is to go out, solicit feedback. So our next step is to really dive more deeply into analysis after we've heard from the public and commission members. And then ultimately we have one meeting left for to present alternative analysis. We do have some preliminary design, some concept design as part of the final commission meeting, and the product we do is a study report will be developed. It's underway as we speak. So this is all on the way, as you see on the bottom, public engagement. That's why we're out here today, and why for pre-commission meetings with more, we want to hear from everybody. And so I wanted to last commission meeting, we had we listened to what people say, and so we want to come back and here we have a City of Boston, our partners are looking to potentially do some extra public outreach between this commission meeting and next commission meeting. They have community walks, they have office hours, to travel planner. And we also plan on engaging with neighborhood associations, the local commission. And so we heard from you, and so we want to make sure we are out there hearing from you and contacting. So with that said, it's now time to open it up to the commission members. And so I turn it over to the secretary if she'd like to say anything.
Sure, for any questions or comments?
Could you folks identify yourself?
Yes, sorry.
Thank you so much. It's not loud tonight, we have difficulty projecting. Thank you.
All right, we will go ahead and start on that end.
If you hold and press the button on your microphone briefly, it will turn red.
David Mullen, UMass Governor Power.
Go Deputy Chief of Transportation, City of Boston, BT Commission.
Frank Baker, I'm a neighborhood person. I'm Gabe Fields representative on here. Representative sends his best. He had a family engagement.
Dan Hunt, State Representative. Jake Walkman, I'm also a neighborhood person, and I am Nick Collins as the
Monica Tibbetts, not Secretary of Transportation.
John Fitzgerald, District 3 City Council.
Johnson, director.
Yeah, I heard it. I heard it.
Sure, I'm Jensen from the VPDA, representing the city.
All right, I will open it up to questions.
The commission have thoughts,
Yes, please.
yeah, great. So I want to thank MassDOT for, some good ideas in this deck, and especially the planners, you all, did their own work, or you all presented their own work, that was, there's really good ideas in there. But it doesn't really add up to the reason why this commission exists in the law created a commission, which was to create a comprehensive plan for more support. I'm worried, this is our third or 4 meetings. I was worried originally, because there seems to be a disconnect between the way that MassDOT generally does things and the law that created this commission, but also the reason behind that law was created. There's a disconnect there. And here's how I know it. I know it because the building in Selena's point, there's a lot of off-the-shelf things in addition to the good ideas and new ideas in this presentation that don't even fit with the original law or mandate for your table or. But what's worse is that the parts that are in the law that created this commission aren't really fully baked. We're still really at the idea stage. I think MassDOT and the commission has a lot of work to do to improve this for the community. I'll say, I'm really particularly worried about the renderings. I think that they're too stylistic and conceptual to really show what's actually happened on the roadway. That may be misleading to the type of wall, for example. I'm also worried about all the things that can be asked for. I understand that maybe the commission thinks it listened, MassDOT thinks it listened to the community. But I took notes, all the things, all the great ideas that the community asked for at the last meeting, and there were about 20 major things that the community asked for. I grouped them all together, I sent them to MassDOT, and I took notes on which of those were included in the presentation today, and unfortunately, only about 4, right, leaving about 14 that weren't. Things like you get a feel for how the MBTA interacts with the board. This isn't just about the road, the law just isn't only about the road, this is like the usual way that MassDOT does things, and running up against a reason for this commission, which is to bring together all these groups and really get them to think of new things, you get them to make this board work better. I'll take on DCR. I don't think much of that was presented is new. I'm all off the shelf. What of that can you point to keep from this community? Not much, if anything. So I'll take notes again, the community says, and I'll send it back to MassDOT. I think we've got to change how we work. I think we've got to actually also extend the timeline of the commission to get this right. Because again, MassDOT's usual way of doing things is running up against not only the reason for this commission, but also the real need for this commission. And you can hear more about that from my friends. So, I'd like to make a motion that we recommend to the legislature that we extend the commission for a determined period of time, we can figure that out later. But at least recommend we extend it because we're nowhere near that. There's a lot of work to do.
So there's a motion on the floor. I'd like to second that if possible, if the commission has an appetite for it, Secretary.
I think we're getting a little too ahead of ourselves as far as the rules that exist within our duties. I think it would, I believe that the secretary needed to a board meeting, and that if needed, Senator Collins and I, along with Dave Beal, who created this legislation, could simply extend it out. We could also have a report of the work that's currently been done, and still continue to work. Jake, having written legislation with Senator Collins, the goal was to bring folks together, having previously been at DCR, as a community member, obviously frustrated with the fact that 6 years ago this project was tabled. But at that time, I had worked at DCR and spent 3 years along with Rob Wool. And at that time, that report was 2.8, where we've gotten to now, and without all of the other design aspects, where we're at now is above 6 and a much bigger project. I don't think at the time DCR could have constructed that $40 million project, and encouraged by the work in the professionalism of the secretary, for putting such a professional piece together. And I'm anxious to hear from the community, but we had a meeting with a lot of the yacht club folks. And on these conceptual designs, some of those issues that arose haven't been addressed in this presentation, but I'm confident that having met with Evan and a number of others on site, that those countless meetings will add to a better product. And I think that where we've come in the last 10 years, we're up listed a few of the items, but putting in the backflow preventers at a number of locations has prevented flooding on Morrissey in its current concept at above 11.2 feet, which is 2 times a day, most of the time we see flooding. And now it's once or twice a month with a king tide, which, you know, obviously isn't great. I was with many of you stuck on Dot Ave. James Baker took them 2 hours to get from point A to point B. My commute to the Boys and Girls Club instead of 10 minutes was an hour and 10 minutes to walk. So I share your frustration with the current existing conditions of Morrissey Boulevard, but I am encouraged by the professionalism of the Secretary of Transportation, along with the Commissioner of DCR, and having the Jameson and Mayor Wu at the table. Where we've erred in this process is having the city of Boston have an idea in the stovepipe. DCR designed something almost to 25%, only to then have the city of Boston object. But I think we're growing in the same direction in the coverage by the process. And if extended, yeah, that's something that Senator Collins and I can discuss legislatively.
I would just say there's probably a lot of support for the extension in this room and outside of it. And I totally hear you on saying that we do it the next meeting. I think just the question for my fellow commissioners is, are we really 75% really there on this? And if anyone needs to, please say so.
If I could jump in here. Thank you very much for the presentation. It was a lot of information to take on. And I think for a lot of the folks out there, they're probably still trying to process what was that design I saw in the central zone of Morrissey, and what was the road configuration, and do I like it or not, right? So I'd like to soon get back, put those slides back up, so people have another chance to look at it, and then we can hear the comment. But just quickly on the timeline, I do think an extension is probably worthwhile with this, because I don't feel like we're there yet. And I know that we're talking about, you're saying something was 25% done with the designs. What is in the works already that's being designed? Did I hear that correctly?
The K Circle Columbia Road interchange, as well as the bridge projects, are project development. They've initiated projects, but they're not at 25% design. DCR's design made it to 25% back in 2017.
No, that I guess that's also what I want, because those are important aspects, obviously, that it will affect what myself, the commission, the rest of the community here think should happen along the rest of the road. And I think it's important. I know that we asked for that last time about K Circle. I understand it's early, but even early concepts will help us as a community move along with you, so we understand rather than responding to this. But I understand the early stages of it. Before we get to the alternatives, the K Circle separate study, we'd love to see. I second Representative Hunt on his the Savin Hill Yacht Club and how is that affected, because we did a tour together. I want to make sure they understand how it affects their grade, level, flood zone, et cetera, and how they access their site. So that's something that should be brought up. And then just the bike lanes, when we move from 3 lanes down to 2 and make one a bike lane. I understand when we talk about the intersections of the struggle, right? And if you fix the intersections, don't worry about the actual lanes in between, that traffic will move. I've been around long enough to not always believe everything that we say. I do agree that the intersections are the issue. But I would also love to see the multimodal path on the environmental section of where the berm is. Where folks can then continue from the Neponset Greenway. We have to work at the Neponset Circle connection to get them out to the water. But then continue along past Port Norfolk, find a better road in there, and then collect along the green, because I know I tell bikers, not because I don't like bikers, right? But But when they ask for bike lanes, I say, I cannot support the reason of, I don't trust our drivers these days, right? So if I offered you safe passage, you might have to drive a mile more, I'll send you out to the coast, and you can have a beautiful long run, and look out the water, and go through the environmental, the bioswales and all this stuff, but have a bike path, multimodal path there. But it's safe passage, and you won't be hit by Dry Ave. I think 10 out of 10, 100 out of 100 bikers go, I'll go the extra mile, right? And so, and I think that allows for the people that use Morrissey daily, right? We know that third lane is sort of like, when you're coming southbound, it's like, yeah, well, I'm trying to get to Clear Point. I'm not gonna wait in this traffic in these two lanes, when I know the far right one moves, that third lane, and how important it is to get off to if you're going up Victory and then things like that. And same with coming into UMass Boston, that third lane is open. And for the folks that use it and say, well, there's no point, why am I waiting in this when I can just break off here? So I think saving that third lane, I know, I'm swimming upstream announcing that, but I think that's something the community wants. And I think there's an opportunity to have it in an area where it's a multimodal path on what we're building as the resilience piece, and a lot of folks will use it that way. And then I know I'll let my predecessor, Council Baker, get to this, because I know he always talks about the pathways east and west. One of the main ones there was in the middle of Malibu Beach. You gotta think about this, that's not, you still have to come from one of the further ends, right, to get to that village move. And so is that the best place for it? There just might be other opportunities. I'm not gonna bang you hard on that, but that's the thought. But I'm done talking. I would love to get the zones, what do you call it, the side views, the cross sections. Yeah, if we get the cross section, I don't need it, but I appreciate that. If we get the cross section. No. I can say I love it. Once these other folks are done, I'd love to hear from, let them give another look to digest that and hear from them. Thank you.
Did you prefer, northern, southern?
Well, let's start a case circle, because I feel that that's where all of this is. Anyone else, while we're waiting on that, anyone else on the commission, please go.
Thank you for the presentation, Chair, thank you for coming tonight. So when it comes to the extension, maybe I'm a little bit confused, because what does the fourth meeting bring us? Are we making recommendations, we're talking about raising roads and different things happening, but we haven't really flushed out if we need to raise the road by 6 feet. I don't feel totally comfortable about the discussions that should be around things like, if we need to dredge certain places, what does dredging do for us if we're looking at Savvy Hill Cove, Patton's Cove, Malibu, like if we had a real plan of dredging, what does that do? Does that help us? Do we still need the roads to go up 6 feet? Because again, my concern is the fact that the neighborhoods that we live in and coming from Crescent Ave, we've got, 8 train tracks and then the highway and Morrissey Boulevard and everything else. There's no talk yet of how that neighborhood gets over there. There's, and we're adding more walls. So the wall concerns me, even though we're gaining a lot in the sense of, these pedestrian plazas and bike lanes and things like that, but, maybe my question is, what do we, extending the commission the way that the rep had discussed, which I love, I think it needs to maybe become a working group or something like that. So what are we signing on to after our fourth meeting? Is it like a yay or a nay, Caesar, hail, he's up, he's down, we have to take the 8-foot berms and roads on top of that, and how do we get into discussions? And when do we have discussions around dredging, and even water and sewer has a plan that for the discharge that is still dirty in all our beaches in Dorchester, like, does that happen in this room in an extended commission? There's just so much that I think we need as communities to stay connected on and talk through. I think us making recommendations in June or July makes me feel like that, the officials that are here are gone, and then we're talking about dredging and all the other things after that as just a community without the support of the state. So those are just some of my thoughts around the extension and how there's a lot more here. And even if we're making recommendations and we don't really know what Pazuko Circle looks like yet, both sides of that are basically gonna have to converge on Pazuko Circle. So the recommendation from us coming in this summer, I think, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to maybe live up to all that. It feels like there may be loose ends that we need to at least stay somehow connected. And again, that's about the extension of this group, this working group. Yeah, so those are just some thoughts. I think we need to flush out what dredging looks like for us. I think we need to get an understanding of the Boston Water and Sewer discharge plans, because that's basically gonna keep our water clean. So we wanna actually sit there in the water and not look at dirty water. Thank you.
Thanks. Comments to offer, but listen, I think you're hearing some sentiments here at the commission that are widely shared.
Louder, please.
Sure. I think you're hearing a lot of sentiments here that are widely shared, concern about whether we have enough time, concerns about whether we've addressed everything. I think this is all very legitimate concern. I guess what I'm worried about, and maybe if I want to start comments in kind of the opposite order of what I hope to give. I'm worried that the progress that we're seeing here, we've got to figure out a way to build on it quickly and bring it towards execution of some of the great things that are in here. I'm particularly excited about the work on the intersections. I think you've heard the council talk about the intersections. I think it's advanced significantly. And with the section that we're showing today, I think there's a lot here that we can support, and think that we need to find a way to codify the things that we like and have the options we like and are interested in. Try to find a way to get them identified, and then we figure out how to fund them and implement them. So many of them are going to have to make their difference. I think probably there might be tweaks here and there that we would like to make, and I'm hoping that we can do that now in the board meeting. But I'm as worried about getting it right as I am about getting it started. And because I think there's enough here that we've got the ingredients to potentially get the good things that are in this plan started. So maybe just add a few specific comments. I like, I think, speaking for my team, we've had a chance to review it, my transportation engineers back at the agency. Why here that we like the way that the middle section works. We see a lot of good possibilities in the southern and the northern section. Again, the focus being on intersections, we haven't seen some of that work done before. And I think we're encouraged by a lot of what we're seeing. I love what they've done in and around the Beach Bridge. And I think the aspects that have to do with connecting to the Harbor Walk and Greenway are very exciting. So I guess what I would agree with that, certainly agree with the idea of extending. I want to make sure we're extending into a situation where we can get behind the parts that make sense, and then identify an executor of this work, get them the funding they need, get some of these improvements to happen there. As a person who's used, I'm probably the only one who's had an accident before, and if I'm the only one that's had a car accident, or people like, where we get over the bridge. Fortunately, no one was hurt. But like, I would like to get started on things that can make it safer for not just me as a driver, but people who are riding bicycle and walking that area. Also, that dropped my car at the Freeport gas station. I forget the guy's name, here's my card, right, but the point being, I'd like to get the good parts of this plan going now. And I want to expand just enough to get enough of those things in that we can actually do the project. Because I think you're seeing state, city, cities like elected representatives, state representatives here behind this, and I want to let's find those things that we can do.
I agree with you. I want to add to that. I think that the original vision, if everyone reads the law, it's got you to read a lot of posted on the association website. The original vision by Representative Hunt and Senator Collins is a great one, and it includes, section B, I'm a legal person, II, identify short-term investments to improve mobility for pedestrians, trans users, and cyclists, etc. I didn't see that necessarily in the presentation. So we just gotta follow the original vision, which is very good. We kind of change how we work, and I totally agree. We should do those things in the short term, right now, be iterative, and then also do the long term thing. But this goes back to, we can't just treat this like another stop project.
Well, no, I totally agree with you, like, there's a lot of good here, and my concern would be more after that fourth meeting, does this community not have the air of the people that are sitting on this board that have the ability to continue this, because there's a lot of issues here. But I absolutely, because I was here in 17 when we thought we were going down the 2 lanes, and we understood that it was a lot of the traffic was caused by the multiple movements at our intersections, and we were able to speak to those, and we have spoken to some of them. Then, yeah, I'm all on board, let's move some things ahead, but it's what does next year? How do we continue this, because we still have a whole lot, to speak to Donnie's point, we still have the 10,000 units that are coming, and what is the traffic gonna look like at Kazusko, and to my old neighborhood, how are they gonna get through the train track without, the connection that you look at, it's a green dotted line, but if you actually got your feet on the ground for that green dotted line, you gotta go up 40 steps that are falling apart, gotta go across slippery floor when it's wet, and then back down another 40 steps that are falling apart to get over to all this goodness that's gonna be happening in the next 20 years, so I agree with you, thank you.
I'd also mention that, I know that last meeting, we talked about having meeting 3.5, and we were worried that the 4th meeting was the last one. And we said we would convene a group, and I think some folks here on the commission, the local folks here would gladly do that. And so I think we should still do that, to do a deeper dive into these renderings and aerials and cross sections, so that we can better digest it. So when we come back for that 4th meeting, I think all of us, the folks on the commission as well as the public, are much more educated on the fact and understand what we want to advocate for. So I will get back to you all with what that meeting 3.5 looks like, and make sure we have that in relatively short order the next month and a half, before this meeting 4 happens. But other than that, Secretary, I know we'd love to give a chance to the folks, if folks on the commission are done, right?
Okay, we'll now open. Sorry.
So, Councilor, I want to stand with you on that. We were interested in having those additional meetings in the interim. That means that meeting 4, maybe before, maybe we even have a meeting 5. We're prepared to sit and participate, and I try to identify those options with you.
Okay, we will open up the public comment. Please go up to the microphone so everyone can hear you.
Are we operating through a list, or are we just standing up? There was a list at the front. I'm just asking.
Yeah, Sue has the list.
Secretary,
Yes.
I have the list.
Oh, please.
I-
Sorry about that.
Sorry, Andy, no, you're already up. So why don't you go ahead?
Thanks so much for having me, and
Could you turn, if the microphone's not on for you, and if you could say your name as well, please.
Hi, my name is Andrew Donovan, and I live on Savin Hill. Thank you for having the meeting. I appreciate all the effort you'll put in. It's one small bit of a nuisance that concerns me most. And that's the height of the berm on the center section of Morrissey. I realized they wanted to be 8 feet higher. Now, in East Boston, the head of the city's climate resiliency is calling for 3 feet. And I realize there's ways they have to involve to make it higher on the center section. What I'm asking is if you can keep it as low as possible, maybe 4 feet, and do some offshore mitigation to break the waves. Because at 8 feet, it's a wall, even if there's greenery and whatnot, there's a wall from the park that you can't see the ocean anymore. And that's a lot to ask, to wall is a lot. If we keep that lower, and some offshore mitigation, I think it'd be much better. Thank you very much. Hey, John, go ahead.
So the first on the list was Andrew Donovan. Format, so just to be clear, we're gonna take 3 in person, 3 live raised hands online, and then 3 chats. We have virtual. This is a hybrid meeting as well. Also, there is a clipboard that's going around. Ashley, she's over here on my left. It's for signing up. You get to sign up. So next name on the list is Sarah Manning.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I live in Lamp Point and I don't drive, so I really love all of the emphasis on ensuring mobility for folks who either don't have access to a car or choose to not have access to a car. I think particularly when climate mitigation is part of it, we should be thinking about vehicle miles traveled and how our individual choices collectively create climate change. I am a little bit curious about what is the plan for increasing connectivity with JFK UMass and hearing a bit more about that.
I am not prepared to update you on that study, but I do know that the city is doing a station access study. It's underway. And so they're working closely with them. They're on our team. So we are going to, as part of our next phase of looking at analysis of the transit access. So that'll be part of the next next up, Don Walsh.
All right, first of all, I have to apologize for everybody that's heard me say this one time, and I gotta say it again. We've never seen anything like this. I've lived here for 77 years. We're seeing 10,000 housing units. That's 22,000 more neighbors. We're seeing 7 million square feet of commercial space. That could be 30,000 commuters. Those numbers are unbelievable. They're just unfathomable. In the entire Columbia Savin Hill neighborhood, there's 18,000 people living there today. So we're gonna more than double that? And what I hear today, what I hear today and what I've heard in the other 2 meetings before this, I don't get any sense, any feel that anyone believes what I'm saying about that these numbers are unbelievable. I just don't get that anyone is grasping that we've never seen anything like this. I mean, we've never seen 22,000 more neighbors, 30,000 more commuters. And I don't get the feel that you're really wrestling with that. Right, so that's obviously a big concern, literally an obsession with that. And I drive my wife crazy. All right, but the second thing I would like to mention is I really would like to thank Dan, Nick, Frank Baker, and Dave Beal for putting this together. This is the best effort on paper that I've seen in the 50+ years that I've been active in the Civic Association. I have never seen the state and the city coming together. I'm not saying you're doing the job yet, believe me. But I've never seen you even on paper coming together and saying, we've got to work together, we've got to do this and that. That's a huge step, and I really applaud everybody that's working on that. It's really important. But at the same point in time, I mean, you gave me too much information. I mean, you know, you're obviously a lot smarter than I am. I couldn't process it all. I know I've got a ton of questions, but I can't get them out now because I just can't digest all the information. I need time to process it, and I really would love to talk it over with people. And we don't have that, so we need to have the time to discuss. Going back to our civic days, even to fight about stuff. Well, we're doing, but that's part of the process we don't have. So again, big numbers, and this could be the best thing we've ever seen. I've got my fingers crossed. I hope that it really works out. Thanks for coming.
We will do that. We will do time to digest, talk with other people. So we can, that's the effect of that 3.5 meeting, whatever we're gonna call it. But, we will set that.
And we are gonna be, understand this is a lot of information to digest. We are looking to put this presentation online tomorrow. Posting to the website, so we're understanding that there's a lot here, so we want people to see it as soon as possible, digest, and we want. Don, we did hear you last time, and we actually had multiple meetings looking at the model data, housing units. And so we have added quite a few housing units into the analysis, so we didn't show it here today, there's a lot of content, but we can certainly reach out, have a conversation about what we did with the numbers, and so yeah, we did hear, we did ignore just so much information today, it's hard to squeeze it all.
I should have mentioned this, because I would like to mention this earlier. Out of the 10,000 number, 6,000 are on Morrissey Boulevard. So out of the new units that are being proposed are right here in Morrissey Boulevard. So it's critical that the Morrissey Boulevard cross units for infrastructure. Plan.
And just if they didn't hear that, he said that the 10,000 units, 6,000 projected to the workforce.
Well, it's the whole thing.
Central Court was the question. So that were the three, those are the first three. We're going to transition to live and raised. And Will, over here to my right, is going to speak. Sorry, open up to the question.
We have some text questions first.
Oh, okay. It's the chat function.
The first question is from Robin. What happens to the yacht club inside the bridge, and can boats still go in and out?
So to answer that question, we're still looking at a bridge area, so as part of the analysis, look at benefits and impacts.
Okay, the next question is from John Mellick. Currently, many illegal left turns are being made from Morrissey Boulevard north onto Freeport Street. Cars in the second lane from the left will turn onto Freeport Street despite the road markings and will often cut off cars which are in the correct left turn lane. Also, with the new yellow left turn lane, cars on Freeport Street intending to turn left onto Morrissey Boulevard are unable to do so because the yellow arrow causes people on Freeport Street who intend to turn left onto Morrissey Boulevard northbound to form a wall with their vehicles, preventing left turn lanes from Freeport Street onto Morrissey Boulevard. Can anything be done about this in the short term, such as posting no left turn signs on the I-93 overpass?
Hi, I'm Jessica Lisa. I work for the design consultant team, Howard Stein Hudson. I'm one of the traffic engineers on this project. In response to that, I think we can absolutely coordinate with DCR to identify what type of short-term improvements can be done there. I'm very familiar with the problem that you're referencing northbound. The queue spills back out of the single left turn lane. So people use the innermost through lane to sneak by and turn left, or to sneak in last minute into the left turn lane. So I think we can look at that. If there's anything that can be done in timing to try to improve the left turn movement or with the signal. The second problem mentioned was about the Freeport Street, I believe the westbound approach, it has a permissive left turn, so when that left turn is going, the opposing double left turn has a protected movement that kind of blocks you from easily being able to turn. So we can work with them to see what can be done. I don't know that a temporary signage fix would solve that problem. But we can identify if there are short-term solutions out there that would help with that problem. Thank you.
The next question is from, John Covert. Has anyone tried to launch a boat where you propose? You show one trailer and boat not near the channel.
Sometimes the graphic designers have fun with the renderings, to be perfectly honest. You know, I think it was raised last time, you know, we recognized that there's probably a whole separate conversation about the boat launch. We recognize it was closed recently. There's been a lot of discussion in the community about incidents in the bay. Honestly, you know, I think we could amend the design to fit the boat launch where the community wants the boat launch. We're not trying to dictate the design of that. We think it's feasible along that stretch in a number of different places, and we'll continue to work with the community at the time.
Thank you, Casey. And now I think we're going to transition to read live.
There aren't any hands raised right now.
All right. No. Great. Go back to in person. Next name on the list is Glenn. Artist.
Yeah. Hey, I'm Glenn Bogart. Live in the area, live in that.
If you could speak
Right
up.
on the mic.
Oh, am I not? Okay, hear my voice. And actually, I was really excited to see some of the designs tonight. I went to the second meeting and the graphics in that one were a lot harder to interpret, so this actually gave me a lot to go on. So excited to look into those. I came with some remarks, but actually I was excited to see how much you had thought about the Beyond Cooley Boulevard intersection. That was kind of like my thought to come tonight, just be like, please, you know, think about eliminating the, you know, sort of the outermost lanes, especially on the Star Market side, as we referred to earlier, which is kind of inexplicably goes from being 1 lane to 2 lanes to 3 lanes to 4 lanes over the course of about 1,000 feet, only to merge all again back in 2 lanes. It just feels, I think I measured it on Google Earth, it's 260 feet wide, which is 2.5 times wider than I-93. So I think that just the whole section from K Circle to Beyond Cooley Boulevard, you know, if it was reduced down to 6 lanes, that's already great, because when you actually add up all of those sort of ancillary roads on the side, the widest point is actually 13 lanes wide, and it's almost never fewer than 9 or 10. So that's kind of like, I just sort of thought if they're able to reduce all of that, then suddenly designing pedestrian bridges get easier and a lot of the other things do. So yeah, just as a resident in the area, I've always like hated those side roads, and I feel like they actually introduce a lot of additional light cycles, especially at Beyond Cooley Boulevard, where you're waiting sometimes 3 or 6 minutes to get through those. So it sounds like you've all thought about that. So I'm really excited to see that on the plan. A cool way of diverting, hopefully, a lot of those left turns that seem to cause a lot of the issues into different solutions. You know, I trust the modelers on that, but that feels like the right place to be going because of where so much of the life is Tom Twitter. Thanks. Thank you.
Next name, next person, Irene Fazio. Say that correct.
You said it perfect. This is so exciting to speak up here. If I can speak. So first off, thanks for all the hard work. I know it's really hard to get everybody, especially the two, which are getting in Boston, insane politics, the state and the city working together. Something that obviously first time happening, and we are all struggling and hoping that this all can do a good job together and get this where we want it to be. One thing that I noticed on that Moakley Park drawing, I don't know if you can put that up there, but you have all this green space and you've got this bike path. Well, there's people that are going to Moakley Park. So I don't know if anybody plays any sports, but I do, BSSC, there's no parking there. If you just put in bike lanes and there are no spaces to park at the park, there's literally the one section that you showed right there. That's like 15 spaces. And there's like multiple people that play soccer, so I don't know if you're adding
Just to
spaces.
put the bike lane on the other side of the park. It's just to make it so the bike lane isn't between the road and the parking spaces. Yeah, it's not the most detailed rendering, but the intent is not to limit parking.
So you are keeping the parking,
The
just to
intent
be
is to
clear.
make it a parking protected bike.
So it's,
So that you don't get doored by the driver's side door, you're on the other side of the parking lot.
excellent, I just wanted to see because there's not enough parking as it is to participate in any activities.
These are park cars. That's the parking and the bike lane just gets moved on that side.
Excellent, so I don't know if anybody had that question, I had that question, so. It'd be great if they had actually a little more parking over there by Moakley, but that's probably another initiative, and I don't know if that's something separate, because a lot of people, people go to use the park. And they don't all drive, they do walk there, but it's not as many as you think. For all those clubs and initiatives, they're coming from other towns into the area, they're not all local, that's just the reality. So one of the other things I noticed is this environmental bike families, all that bike paths are wider, especially on Morrissey Boulevard. Is there gonna be an influx of families because they can't afford to buy a home here? So I don't know where you guys are getting the idea that families are coming into the neighborhood when that's not the reality. They are leaving the neighborhood and we're using precious real estate on the Morrissey Boulevard dedicated to a wider bike path. I don't know if that's like actually necessary. It's great in theory, I would love for more families to be in the neighborhood, but that's not a reality, the prices are just going up. And the 10,000 units that are going in, who is that for? That's probably gonna be for retirees, people downsizing, or maybe like a single parent, I don't know, but it's not families. They're not coming into the city, I think that's a pipe dream. So I would love that, but I don't think that's a reality, and I think that's precious real estate that could be given back to the road, or however you like think about doing the renderings, because I really don't see that. I probably have some other things, like Don Walsh was bringing up which were great points. And there's so many things on those renderings I have questions about, like the other one was it the turns? I think it was on the next couple slides, right in front of the Boston Globe. Right there. Yeah, I think that one, where you said the left-hand lane, we'd have all the traffic go past and then do like a turn to get into, I think it was UMass, is that correct?
Yeah, this one here, so if you're going southbound and today you'd be way over on the right, on the frontage road, and you'd be in that left turn here, instead you would continue straight and make a U-turn.
So and that sounds like an interesting concept, but would everybody be like backed up in that U-turn? Because here's my concern that we did not talk about is the emissions. So you're raising it 4 or 5 or 8 feet, as Andy noted. We've got all these like barriers that Frank is talking about. That all of us in Savin Hill is gonna be in this emission area with all that traffic. Now, right now, it's in front of the old Boston Globe, which made sense why all those lanes are there, because it was for all the employees going in there. But the traffic backs up there is better from an environmental and breathing perspective for the neighborhood than having it all go down there and like we're all sitting and backed up with traffic and emissions. And that is a concern on that solution. I don't know if that was really addressed or thought about when you're doing that. This part there is where the neighbors are in this part of the neighborhood, and then there's some areas that are not as many people at the office area. So it's just something to consider. Thank you, those are all my questions. Everybody's doing a great job. There's just a lot of information. Those are the highlights that I wrote down.
No, and air quality certainly and emissions, certainly important KPIs. I think Ethan had them in the list. So traditionally, congestion and air quality kind of go together, right? Emissions are coming from car stop. So the idea with these unique intersection types is they are more efficient. They result in less tailpipe emissions because they have less cars stopped sitting unnecessarily. So I appreciate your point. Air quality definitely a really important part of evaluating something.
Can I ask? So the KPIs weren't what I call KPIs, they didn't have the actual goals, did you share the actual targets?
We do have, I don't off the top of my head, but we do have them and certainly make them available to the group. Yeah, there's like to each of the. Too far presentation to go there, but to each of those items on those lenses, right, we have a series of, potential numeric values that, yeah, we'd be happy to. Admittedly, we didn't know this, I think it was the most interesting presentation topic, but to dive into that.
Well, there may be more work in BCI than the presentation, so I think we wanted to see all that work, should work, right? I just have to say this, one thing that I think we must do for the next meeting, share a presentation ahead of time. Because it is a lot to absorb, and that was possible this time, but it didn't happen, we need to change that. And that was an absolute last game that was agreed to, didn't happen, so.
I also just wanted to add about the U-turn, because that was sort of right or halfway up toward the bridge, because I saw that too, and I said to myself, is that gonna work? And how does it? There is an example of it, and I'm not saying it's great or bad or good or whatever, but it's an example. If you're in Forest Hills, you're coming from Dorchester on one street, and if you remember when the overpass existed, and the traffic that was underneath the overpass right at Forest Hills, and they took the overpass down, they put in one of these U-turns where it's, as you go up towards the Arboretum, from Morton Street, cross over Center Street, and go up there, they do have this like U-turn there. In my experience, because my mother lives over that way, it's not terrible. It has worked and the traffic is better there. I'm not saying it will work here, but if you want to see an example of what one looks like of that U-turn further up, to then take the right instead of taking the left from the direction you were coming, it's a good example to go check it.
Next, John Rich.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. My main concern is with the center zone, and I'm curious, is the representative from ACON still here?
Yeah.
Hey, and so I have some criticism about the plan as is, and also I'd like to address the environmental issue with our rep from DCR. We've got to deal with the reality of sea level rise and 100-year storm waves. The commission had a mandate to raise the road, and that's what's going on. That's what's illustrated. That's very nice looking line there. But you mentioned it's a great view from on top of that berm and the roadways and stuff. The concept there seems to be intended that people using that are driving in there. And they're all coming there from Morrissey Boulevard. Probably less than half the people who are occupying the space here are actually are driving in on the boulevard. Most of the users are people in the neighborhood. We walk in around the beach, around Dorchester Bay Basin. We drive into the common park and walk. If you raise the berm there, you're cutting us off visually from the harbor. I think it's a mistake to build a berm in that location for two reasons. Number one, it's a visual thing. The berm could go all around the perimeter of Dorchester Bay Basin and create public space. As we see there, that could all be pushed back. You could build a bridge as needed, but you could make Morrissey Boulevard in the central zone a lot of it a viaduct high enough to accommodate sea level rise. But the berm, whatever we need to raise the roadway on Morrissey Boulevard, doesn't have to be on solid ground. It could be a viaduct. We could dredge out all of that soil there and improve the environmental condition in Dorchester Bay Basin. What's being neglected right now is that it's highly contaminated, very deep sediment layer in there. In this picture, there's no people in the water. There's no people wading in the water on the inlet side. When they do, they get stuck. And some people have to be rescued. It's well documented. It's been going on for decades. What is in that sediment is documented by Boston Water and Sewer Authority, and MWRA testing, and it's very well documented by UMass Boston Marine Biology Department. It's the most contaminated zone in the entire Boston Harbor. And we have people, a lot of people don't understand, their children are playing, wading around in absolute filth. Most days, the beach is closed, but people are in there anyway. I don't want to go into detail, graphic detail, about how bad that sediment is. But unless you were a child, stuck up to your waist in muck like that, you have no idea how close to death you are. If you've never really spent time close to water like that, living close to it, working on it, you have no idea how toxic that is. And when you stir it up, it'll make most people vomit. So there's something missing in the DCR concept of what we're going to do ecologically, environmentally with this roadway. We're talking about pumps here and there. That's cool. We need them. But if we build that berm, all we're doing is perpetuate the filth that is inside Dorchester Bay Basin. We have a proposal. I won't go into all the detail here. I've submitted it to most of the people here in the agencies. I'll give tips, not just one, but I brought some hard copies. There are ecologically, environmentally safe ways to dredge and beneficially use that material. It's been going on since the early 1990s. Our partner, industrialized Northeast states, are using it. It's used extensively in Japan. Build airports on it in Japan. You can stabilize it with non-toxic material. And I've written a lot of detail about it. And so I'm asking you to reconsider what you have here for the center zone, to provide a lot of detail on an alternative. I'd like you to look at it.
Joey, I do want to be respectful of.
Yeah, one last thing, you got it. One last thing, as far as the intermodal concept goes. Has MassDOT Intermodal considered trying to work in a Boston Harbor ferry terminal next to Dorchester Bay City?
As far as I understand, it's not.
Would you consider it? Because it makes a lot of sense. Tie in, you're so close, you're in walking distance to the red line. And JFK has bus service to the medical centers. So
My authority is to say thank you. But we certainly understood it's the record, but.
Right. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Joe.
And also it's moving along. It's good to see.
Before we transition to one of the online chats, next up is Senator Collins.
Good evening and thank you. As the gentleman's points, I'd like to see next meeting, the Boston Water Sewer Commission come in and do a presentation. I think you just shared in the chat, they have some incredible plans. One of the things I think has been lost in some of this discussion is not just the physical investments that we have to make to prevent the coastline from coming over and continuing to come over. And focusing on, you know, there's been a mission creep a bit, but there's only one road that's being described tonight, that when it rains, even just above average, shuts down. It's Morrissey, it's not Columbia Road, David Boulevard. So I know there's an interest there, but that should be a conversation for another commission, another setting, but the stormwater, projects are already at full plan, done by the Water Sewer Commission. To address Dorchester Bay Basin. They have one there, one for Joe Finnegan Park and Old Harbor Pump Station, they told me before. Right now, the water's still full. Because after a storm comes in, it just flies right up, Dorchester Bay Basin, all the sewer and discharge. Tinian Beach, so Tinian Beach, it's the red flag, when it rains, more than average, and even though it's out there on harbor, it doesn't have the access to the beach. You know, there's the ability. So I think we should be thinking about the cooperation with our partners at the local level, in the rain, in the water, how we capture stormwater and how we discharge it. Makes as much difference, and probably is as important. Those are immediate impacts. We're gonna see quality and they operate similarly to burn. The proposal that online, you can see them, that would allow for their, the protection of the shoreline in the case here, on the bridge. So I really would like to have them come back, and the community to be able to digest that. That's a shovel ready project. It would cost a lot of money. Combined, you know, if the water sewer had, would be about $1.5 billion. If we pick out the Dorchester piece, which would have an immediate impact on what we see on the roadway, lower, also trying to figure out the multimodal use and construction growth itself. It's gonna combine improve the quality of water and the ability to access to the beaches that right now we don't get equitably, and also manage the shoreline. So I'm asking the DOT to put them up to the next year. They had a great proposal. I'd like everyone to look at it and get right. It's something I think if we did, and everyone more time to apply for funding, I think this is why this is so important. It's gonna take credit support, can't do all this stuff. The backs of states. No way to do it financially, so that's where I want to share tonight. I really hope we can get water and sewer here. They have credible plans that would help from the Boston Circle area, all the way to the Juice Circle, the old harbor pump station that they're proposing, the old harbor park, I should say, Joe Finnegan Park, and here, it was the big thing. Thank you. Thank you.
That guy should go to commission.
We're gonna go back to the chat function.
Yeah, we have a couple comments, to summarize, really, one about, eliminating, travel lanes for bikes. And, you know, we believe that the guys move to not make things worse. We did reference that, it's really one of the intersections that we're trying to make improvements to that will help that.
Yeah, so I think, you know, the question alludes to, is it worth giving the space from cars to bicycles? Recognize that there are users out there that do not use a bicycle, that choose not to, that probably view it as a foolish, whimsical. So across the country, we're trying to figure out how to address vehicle miles traveled, make our cities safer to walk and bike and live in. And across the country, we're trying to figure out how to balance that. The needs we have today, the needs people who live in the community have, it may be hard to drive or maybe hard to walk because of the condition. So we think it's really important in urban environments. I think the city and the state have all demonstrated this recently to prioritize investing in bicyclist pedestrian infrastructure, because there is a need over the next 5, 10, 20 years to get more people out of it. Right now, they're in their cars since there's no other viable option. And I recognize, I think one of their comments, it was someone in their 70s who maybe can't ride a bike. I think our logic is, if we get more people on bikes, it will actually even still be easier for her who needs to drive her car, because those people will be out of cars. So that's across the country. There are success stories of roadways that have chosen, cities, states that have chosen to make this type of change, have seen the results. They've seen not only the congestion not increase as feared, but they've seen safety benefits, speed benefits, quality. We think, and we understand the proof will be in the pudding. We understand we haven't shown yet detailed microsimulation traffic analysis. It's coming. And that'll be the, proof will be in the pudding. We want to get up here, play you a video kind of stuff. But I recognize the concern, but we do, I think the project team thinks it's really important to also prioritize those.
We're looking at 1% difference using bikes.
Good.
No, but what?
People online can hear if you want.
I guess, what do we use as statistics for that? We're trying to draw people to do something different, and if it's going to be 1 to 2, is that enough to make the case?
Do you mind if I take I'm breaking the line, but I am 70 years old. I've lived here all my life. I have a car and I have a bike. And John, one of the important things is that people really won't get used to the change unless there are a lot of disincentives to drive. Until that happens, you'll still, most of your constituents will still push back on the idea of shrinking from 3 to 2 on Morrissey Boulevard. But we should shrink from 3 to 2 on Morrissey Boulevard. I don't know if anybody would go to Europe. I don't know if anybody looks around in the rest of the world, but this is a reasonable change. It's hard for a lot of constituents to stomach it, but it is really quite reasonable.
Just respond to and say, I do think we should offer more ways for people to buy me. I just want it to be safe passage. I think that's where you take it. You don't need that third lane to be the bike lane. There can be a bike lane on the environment.
But the pressure is coming from the constituent you're talking to. You can feel it.
Just want to say that.
I cut in the line though. Somebody else is up. No, all right, then I will wrap up and now I'll give you. No, it's another aspect of this living here forever and being 70 years old, and is that people spoke at this, and I'm not in this, I don't come up to many meetings, but 2017, apparently we were on the path, but the path broke down. Probably for the better, in the sense that we are now 7 years out from that, have that much more information. And as John Rich puts it, we know that the reason that we're here is truly because of the environmental impact. I think that the great thing about this meeting, and as Jake puts it, this is a unique opportunity for a number of players that normally are not around, including myself, to work together to see that it really does happen this time. Probably much better than it would have happened if it had happened in 2017. The last thing is I invite everybody to my funeral because John Rich brought up that it is horrendously dangerous to swim inside the bay, which I do twice a day, around high tide all through the summer. So when is it going to be, John? Next year or the year after that? You can plan.
Sorry.
Next question has to do with percentage of cars using the boulevard, or commuters cutting through and live in suburbs outside Boston, as opposed to people who actually live there. We have a little bit of that in the beginning of the presentation. We covered this slide. Casey, you want to?
Yeah, I mean, so the simple answer is during the peak periods, yeah, certainly over half. It's kind of, we have some tools that let us kind of track, you know, the typical origin to destination. We're seeing over half in the peak periods are people, going all the way from Deposit all the way to Preble or K, vice versa. So, you know, it's over the majority during the peak. We expect that number to be a little bit lower off peak, where it probably is a little bit more local.
What about Quincy and Milton?
So that's the majority of where that through traffic is coming from. It's not further out, so on the screen here, right, so you can see the darkest color is Quincy, right? So that's the majority of those trips aren't going much further than, they're not like much further down the coast. It's pretty localized, and that's just the geography of how 93 swings around, and then how it starts to be a little bit less congested.
We can go to here, that's the last kind of question for now.
We have about 2 people left on the list. Next thing, I believe it's Ryan Murphy.
Thanks everyone. My name is Ryan Murphy. I'm a resident of Savin Hill, and I'm also the Commodore of Savin Hill Yacht Club. I want to start by saying thanks to the commission. Really appreciate meeting with us and kind of discussing the project, and hopefully considering our future. Would you mind just going to slide 55? Central zone flood barrier. Thank you. Yeah, almost there. Go backwards. All right. Just, I know these are renderings, but if you look in the top right, there's a black box that says shoreline stabilization, elevation, and restoration. And that's not actually the shoreline. So I would love for the renderings to be a little bit more accurate. And then if you go back one more slide 54. It says in the bottom black box, Savin Hill Yacht Club access with natural elevation changes. So I guess I'm just sort of curious what a natural elevation change means. And I know that's not going to get answered today. I just kind of wanted to bring both of those up for public record. And then lastly, as a resident, I think the plan, I love the bike lanes. I'll leave it at that. Someone mentioned something about families. There are dozens of kids in Savin Hill, including my own, who ride bikes every day, all over the neighborhood, and to the Harbor Walk, and to Moakley Park, and to Southie, and bike lanes would really improve our quality of life, and really relieve the everyday pressure of your kids getting hit by a car. So appreciate the time, and everyone up here, and Ethan and everyone else who's working on this. Thanks a lot.
Bill Walczak.
Hi, Bill Walczak, live in Savin Hill, and current president of Columbia Savin Hill Civic Association. We have a letter that I will just give to you, but I want to bring some context into this. So the neighborhood that Columbia Savin Hill represents has a lot of industrial land that has become post-industrial land. And so it's about 20 acres of land that are kind of in the area east of Dorchester Avenue going down towards the expressway. And that doesn't include Freeport Street and all of the land there that's likely to be developed into housing over the time. I mean, anybody that looks at South Boston can say, wow, you know, like, where Dorchester Avenue and the whole Colony, Boulevard come together. That's all being developed into housing and commercial purposes that used to be, you know, industrial and now it's post-industrial and being redeveloped. And who would have predicted that Gillette would have 30 acres of housing and development, over the next few years. So overall, we need to be thinking about the long-term issues of this neighborhood. And my fear is that we're not, and that we have, as Don would say, 10,000 units and 7 million square feet of space, but that doesn't include what might happen down on Freeport Street. And it doesn't include some of the 220 acres of land that's owned by Susie and by Gerald Chan, who don't build small 3-deckers, you know, they build larger development. So overall, we looked at these things. There have been a number of planning efforts over the past 10 years. Actually, there's been 10 different efforts at planning. And so when this came up and we saw that in the legislation, the enabling legislation, here it goes. Item, well, it's not in this second paragraph, or third paragraph. It says, develop a comprehensive plan for the Morrissey Boulevard corridor. We saw it as a great opportunity to try to get, as the state and the city are both involved, this is an opportunity to try to get real comprehensive planning that's going to look at how this lane gets developed all around the area, not just along Morrissey Boulevard, and not just the issue of flooding in Morrissey Boulevard. And so from our perspective, we see this as an opportunity. And we're really looking forward to the city and state working together to try to figure out how land gets developed over the next 10 years, 20 years, whatever, and how that's going to happen. The other issue is that, you know, of course, we don't want to live with 2 major superhighways there. Morrissey Boulevard is a parkway, and it should be seen as a parkway, as an area that, you know, that it is actually pleasant to be near, not 50-mile-an-hour road cars that are zipping down there, threatening people who bikes, for instance. But I think overall you're getting to the right direction. I see lots of good things that are happening in this plan. But I think what we need to do is really, we need to pull the city in closer and get more comprehensive planning about the entire district, the entire region, before we're able to like make final decisions around this. I think it's really important that we extend the time for this commission, so that we can look at those kinds of issues in addition to just how we're going to prevent water from flipping over Morrissey Boulevard. And I think also that we need to really, I'm sorry that Arthur Jemison, because at the last meeting, Arthur Jemison said he was going to go back to City Hall and find dollars so that we could have comprehensive planning of this area that's going to have so much development over the next 10 years. I'm hoping he will agree with that and find the dollars that are necessary so that we can all work together to make sure that we have a livable community at the end of this development process. Thank you.
Next up, we have, and I apologize if I didn't take your last name right, Selena Murat.
Good evening, everybody. I'm glad that this is being readdressed after a long hiatus. Unfortunately, just wondering, how many people from your team have seen or looked at the plans from over a decade ago?
Wait, if you're sure, I don't know the exact count. Yes.
You have. The concerns that were brought up previously are not really shown here. I mean, a lot of the environmental is new, and the previous plan stopped at Pushkiswa Circle, which now went past to Mosley Park. The U-turn around by Savin Hill Yacht Club, that was something that was discussed that they were going to either try to phase in as a trial to see how that works. But can we go back to that slide? It looks like there's almost 2 U-turns there, or 2 interruptions in the median. So there's a spot between the Veterans Memorial and Savin Hill where you make the final turn, and then it looks like the median narrows down by the yacht club. What is that? Are there 2 entrances or 2 U-turns?
This opens up into a double lane, allow each to make that turn, and then there's still the signal at the outlet.
So it's just a signal, not a turn.
There's,
At the yacht club.
correct.
Okay.
what was the decision to move that from the U-turn at the yacht club to closer to the neighborhood?
Well, I
And
think
the
it was,
benefit of that.
so I think that our designers, if you see how much space that takes up. U-turns take a lot of space when you design them for trucks. So I think the way we laid this out the first time. We knew we had to lay it out for what we call a design vehicle. I think as the design progresses, we talk more about this, we may be able to shift this. Where we don't need quite this much space, if we as a community agree that maybe that one movement doesn't need to handle a WB-67 giant truck.
Which are not allowed on the
Right.
So that's maybe the consideration.
Buses, they did. Right, so buses take kind of the same way.
So with the shift there, moves traffic closer to homes. And leaves more. I live right there. Okay, so there's already so much traffic and movement there, and it's by narrowing that median where there used to be trees and everything, just. Seems like a huge concern. Is there any consideration of putting a natural or tree line? Sound barrier along that border of homes of Union?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent idea, something where, yeah, the landscape architecture team take a look at how. We could kind of use plantings to create more of a buffer, so yes.
And I know plants take a long time. Is that something that once it's considered to be moved into phase one or done to start growing before construction?
Yeah, and sometimes they do plant the kind of live saplings. But yeah. I think
Can we move to the slide where it's by the 93 bridge with the U-turn? Yeah. Oh, no. The one we had. Yeah, so the median seems to be gone with all the trees and the grass between the two lanes going, I'm gonna call it north and south.
There's no meeting here today. This is the stretch right approaching the Beach Bridge.
Yes, so there's. Is the bridge right where the cutoff is?
It's, the bridge is basically right on.
Okay, so there's like kind of. That are, it seems, whatever, but where the bike lane is to the road, is there any? Greenery or trees, or is it gonna feel like a third lane?
No,
But that's very dangerous, there's lots of accidents where the cars are actually stopped on the trees and not cutting through, like what's the buffer zone between the pedestrians and the road?
Typically 3 feet minimum,
So it's elevated up,
so the bike lane is elevated up, there's a curve. And then a little buffer, and then the bike lane is up on its own facility, separated.
and is it possible to plant trees or something there too?
It is possible to, with this constrained cross section, for here, there might not be space, but certainly. Once we get away from the Beans Bridge, there's probably a little bit more space. To create more significant noticeable.
And just a comment from the previous group that was doing this project, one thing I did that was very helpful was they printed large slides of their presentation, put them around the board. Where people could actually write comments and circle question areas, and people from the presentation were around to answer them and address them.
That's sort of an open house with some boards.
We also, just echo those comments, and one of the selling points on dropping a lane, not for cyclists, but to allow for multiple, U-turn movement. And, trees and greenery on the interstates, so which is now white between the two tracks, north and south. To be a true chapter A to Parkway roadway. I understand that there's a lot of that said on the other side, but the DCR refers to their parkways as a road within a park. A road where they have all that aesthetically pleasing trees and things like that. And would agree that I don't see how that green two-way throughway at Dean Cooley would be beneficial. It would be for traffic certainly, but that's currently at an effort. Pedestrians is one of the things that I hear from most of residents that go from Savin Hill, walk to work at UMass Boston, and other people that are students in the area. and others that live in other parts of Dorchester that park there, which is a larger concern. But, I would prefer that you look at, again, the placement of that U-turn, and was also going to comment that trucks are not generally allowed on our roadways, which is why, those two left-hand lanes going southbound in front of the Globe were there, so that those Globe trucks can go back to the highway, and so that, trucks servicing UMass Boston would not continue on to the green thing.
So I've been told by numerous persons that, the venue, here, they, unfortunately, they have to, start their closed out procedures with both the, but also bring up staff, so we only have room technically until 8 o'clock, so fortunately, we're gonna have to wrap up, but I return to Mr. Chairman. Sure, yes, station please.
I know there's also a happy game tonight, but I appreciate the commission's service on this, and it's only been mentioned once in the last couple of comments, but.
Could you state your name, sir?
Kevin Diebler, in a neighborhood person, Savage resident, is noise impact. And I haven't seen like really clear information on where this road is being placed. I've heard 3, I've heard 6, I've heard 10. And it's not necessarily, you can't plant anything. No plant will drown out the sound of thousands of vehicles. Tires scraping across asphalt, but when you're raising a road bed up at the level of all the residents who live there, noise is a 100%, 24/7 issue that we face right now, and I haven't heard much in terms of how that impact will, how raising the road bed would, increase noise.
Yeah, apologies, that's not something we've actively or dove deeply into, but it is something we're hyper aware of, and is going to be looked at as part of the analysis. Their quality noise, they're kind of built the analysis category, but it's something we're definitely aware of. So, thank you.
Yep, the last thing is bikes are actually more of an economic mobility tool. They're a lot less expensive than cars, so bike infrastructure is a very important signal to how you care about your residents, your constituents, trying to work and get to work. So it is important that we invest in that. Thank you. Right, I'd add one thing on the cross section, does it show the bike lanes are raised? You said they're raised on the rendering, but on the cross section, are they raised?
It depends on which area, but it's on.
Yeah, so it'd be helpful to explain.
Yeah, I should.
But either way, not a big deal. But with that, unless the commission has any further questions, I think we call this meeting to an end.
Do you guys mind if I say a few words? I was signed up to give testimony. I think I was the last one to speak.
I appreciate it.
I'll be 30 seconds.
You got 30 seconds.
30 seconds. My name is Jawan Skeens. I am a candidate running from First Suffolk District, Massachusetts State Senate. I just have a few quick announcements. I graduated from South Boston High School, utilized Morrissey Boulevard, as well as Carson Beach all the time. I want to say it's great to see that there are improvements coming to Morrissey Boulevard. I just ask that you don't take away too much from the cars that are traveling up. I know we live in New England, right? There's a lot of rain, cold weather. So that way it's making sure that cars are able to get through. Oftentimes it's been shut off at Morrissey Boulevard, so we can just continue to get creative about how we're mediating traffic as we go forward. The second thing is, when it comes to I'm almost done, the 10,000 units that are coming in, I believe, I would like to see 60% of, when it comes to the area median income, an inclusionary development policy. I want to make sure that we're bringing in the families, that they're able to stay here inside, the city of Boston. We have a lot of families that are being laid up. We just want to make sure. we have space for them.
We gotta go. Appreciate it, folks. We'll get back to you on the meeting 3.5 and when we do, beginning a meeting to go. Thank you all.